Hey, welcome to another video on the database application. We're going to create a comments administration page in this video. And so you can see what I have in front of me is I have first of all a list of all the users, and then following that are the comments that are associated with that user. So you can see down here Nancy only has made one comment, and you can see user number 4 is Bill, and he has made no comments, so his comment section is empty. So how is this going to work? Well, first of all, we have to do a select statement to grab all of the users, and then inside of that loop we're going to do another select statement which grabs all the comments that are related to that user ID, and then finally we'll give them a delete button option so we can get rid of that comment. So a good place for us to start would be to use the code that we created in the show users admin page. And so the reason why I would pick this is because it already has a select statement that creates the users selected on the table and prints them all out on the screen. And the only part we'll have to change is this section here where we're doing the buttons. So let's do a Control A and copy this whole work here. So inside of Recipe Lister Project, we're going to go to New PHP file. So I'm going to call this thing Show Comments Admin Page. And let's try that. Okay, so we'll delete the code that's there and paste in the previous. So this will show instead of user administration, we're going to rename this as comments administration. We'll check to see if the user is really an admin, and if they're not, then we'll tell them to go away. We'll start with a select statement. We're going to get all of the users and print them onto the screen. And so down to here, not much has changed. Now inside of the section where we're putting in the buttons for process, delete, and edit users, let's delete that and we'll leave it just as is. So I'm going to save this and test it out and see what we get. So let's get to our program here. We'll go log in first and then we'll see if it'll work. So I'm going to type in up here show comments admin.php. And so far we have just the users, which isn't bad. We're going to list the users first and then every comment that follows them. I'll put in a comment here so we can see what we're doing next. Now show all comments from this user. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is figure out what our query is going to be. So let's do a SQL statement. But I'm going to have to rename this. We have a SQL statement up here and we're now inside the loop, the while loop. So let's just call this SQL statement 2. And we're going to say we're going to select star from, and let's say the comments table. And that'll print all the comments. We're going to modify that. We don't want to print all the comments, just the ones that belong to the user. Okay, looking at the model that we've got up here, we've created the SQL statement. We know that the connection is already true. It's working because we're inside of this area. So we're going to have to use this as our model here. So I'm going to say result 2, and the connection is going to look at SQL statement 2. So now we're going to have an if statement, if the results, and then a bunch of stuff. So let's go copy that, and if the results are valid, which means we're using result 2 is value, then we're going to use another row counter. So we've already used row up here, so now we have to say something else. I'm going to call it row 2, and then all of this is invalid. Let's delete all those. We're going to get results from, let's see, that's a number 2 as well. We're going to get results from the table of comments, not from users. So we're going to have different stuff coming out here. So we're going to say echo, we're going to say comment ID. That's the first thing. I don't remember exactly what all these comments are, so let's go look in the table here, the comments table, and let's look at the contents here. So the column headers are comment text, recipe table ID, and users table ID. So for right now I'm just using the first two, the ID and the comment text. So that would be row 2, and then the column header is ID. And then the comment text is also from the database, so it's row 2 and it's called comment text. And let's see, we might as well print something as a divider. And let's see, we need a break. And it just occurs to me that we probably need a break at the previous line. And on this one, I'm just going to put in a couple of hyphens. Okay, so we've got ourselves a loop to show all the comments. And we got a problem. Unexpected else. So if results, we got an if, another while. Looks like we're missing a curly bracket. So he matches to here. This matches to that one. And we have an if. There. Okay, the results have cleared up. Okay, I'm going to go back to my browser and check to see if it runs. So let's go to recipe lister and refresh. Okay, so you can see that I'm getting comments. The problem is that I'm getting all of the comments in the comments table for every single user. Now that's not quite accurate. I only want to show the comments that are associated with the user Nancy in this case. So we're going to have to modify our SQL statement to create the correct comment coming out of this list. Okay, so we're going to attack this line right here where it says select star from comments table. So in the comments table, we have an association here called the user's table ID. And so you can see that that number is number 1 for almost all of my comments, and then number 3 would be Nancy, and she is only commenting on some recipe number 13. So that column there is critical. So users table underscore ID is where we're going. So I'm going to say where users table ID, and I want it somehow to be able to come up with the user ID. So I'm looking for that variable. However, how do I get the user ID out of the database? And the correct answer that you should be saying is you should be using a join statement. You're talking about two different tables and you want to join them together. So let's start with some code here and go create a join statement in our SQL environment. So I'm going to go back into my MAMP server, paste in that code. So select star from comments table. Let's see what that does. It brings up all of the comments. Okay. Now I want to join a table with the users. So I'm going to type in join, and let's see, we're going to type the users table on. Let's see, the users table.id is going to be equal to the comments table dot users table ID, where the user ID equals 1. So I'm going to say where ID equals 1. Or let's see, what was Nancy? She was 3. I'm just going to look at Nancy. So let's see if we can get just Nancy's comments. Got a problem, it says here. ID is ambiguous. What does that mean? Let's take off the last phrase here about where ID equals 3, and you'll see why ambiguous is said here. So when you join two tables together, the first 4 columns here come from the comments. Then the last 4 comments or columns here are coming from the users table. And you can see that there's an ID for the user and there's an ID for the comment. Ambiguous means it doesn't know which column we're talking about if we talk about ID. So we have to be a little more specific. So let's modify our query a little bit to be more specific. So when I say where ID equals 3, the computer says I don't know which ID you're talking about. So we have to specify the table. So we can say where users table.id equals 3. Now let's try that. That should pull up just Nancy. So Nancy created 1 comment. Now we're on to something. I'm going to take this code, copy it, and let's go back into our program. So we've got ourselves a select statement, and I want to delete all that and paste in the new one. Okay, let's turn on word wrap. So instead of 3, I need to have actual specific variable name. So I'm looking for something called user ID. Where do I get the user ID from? Well, I haven't defined that yet, but I could get it from up here on this row. After we capture the user ID from the table, I'm going to say user ID equals row of ID. So that captures the user's ID, and then we're going to use it back in here again. This time, when we run it, we should see a better result. Let's go back, and I'm going to refresh this page. Now, dumb recipe, as you recall, was from Nancy, and all the rest of them were from Shad, so these should change when we refresh. There we go. So Nancy has dumb recipe, and Bill has nothing, and Shad has, looks like, about 7 comments. So it looks like we're printing off the correct things. Now what's left is to do a little bit of CSS work to make this prettier.